Who is head of India Equity at BNP Paribas. He's joining us to take some questions. Abhiram, good to have you with us here. Thank you very much for your time. I just want to start with one specific segment, if you have any thoughts. The home financiers, and that too smaller ones. There are two or three of these names which come up in discussion often. Home First, for example. I don't know if you have active coverage on any of these. There is Aptus Value. There is Aavas Financiers. All in the, making loans of between 10, 15 lakhs, the bulk of it. Any thoughts on this segment? Stocks have not done very well over the last couple of years. At least Home First has not. 3 years now, stock's been flat. Growth rates have been pretty solid. Any thoughts at all, Abhiram?
Hi, Prashant. On that segment in particular, I don't recall having done a lot of in-depth work on this. That said, I think one of the things that you may see going forward, something that I had mentioned to you previously as well, is that investors have historically, at least in the last year or so, focused on absolutely only the large cap financials, certainly in banks at least. It's only now, that is the last month or so, that they're starting to spread out a little bit more. Look at a slightly smaller names as a consideration set. So if indeed the numbers are as good as you say, then the chances are that they've just been off investor radars. But it's not a space I've done a lot of work on.
All right. Hi, Abhiram. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining in. Abhiram, I think you were in the camp who was saying in the second half of this year, with the 12-month time horizon, you believe we'll be closer to around 20,000 odd mark. Seems we are moving in that direction, even after the 6% rally that we've seen from the recent lows. Do you think we have enough to do another 10% from here with the 12-month horizon?
I think when I was here the last time, I did mention that we've turned a little more positive on the markets, generally saying that the downside may have been kind of done. Looking ahead, I think our Nifty target is around mid-19,000s. So that would suggest a high single digit upside from here. So there's not a whole lot of change in that thinking. Now, what would have happened in the last month or so is that investors would have considered the results with a bit more, granularity. And broadly, even though we've had a few disappointments, especially on IT and maybe consumer staples, it's been kind of offset by other segments, certainly the financial SPAC. So that view is relatively unchanged. Still see high single digits by the end of the year.
Autos have also done relatively well, Abhiram. At least the numbers that we got from Bajaj Auto, Hero MotoCorp was not a bad showing. TVS Motors was quite strong. Any thoughts on autos?
In autos, again, we take a slightly longer term view. We still like the four-wheeler companies more than the two-wheelers. We certainly think that EV is a long-term disruption risk for the sector. That said, we've also not seen a whole lot in terms of rural improvement. So even if we do go for names within the two-wheeler pack, it will be most likely the ones that sell higher-end models. So that more or less remains. Now, what's happened in the past month or so, apart from the results coming through, also is that on the EV side, you've had some disruptions, certainly on the production side. And as a result, that threat will seem to have dimmed a little bit. But these are temporary issues on the production front. And I think that over the next few months or so, you'll start to see this change. And I think in 3 or 4 months' time, we'll be talking much more about EVs again. And so from two-wheelers, I'd say broadly we like four-wheelers, but within two-wheelers, even if you're considering that area, you have to look at those companies that face less of that risk and are more diversified.
I was just going through this Warren Buffett AGM Q&A, and he was asked a question on autos, and he just said it's just too tough with EVs, etc. You don't know who's going to be the winner, etc. And I remember there's another person we speak with, Samir, who has a pretty similar view. But his view is that whatever is the bigger global trend, why it would be true here in any individual market as well. Although dynamics in the US and India are very different, penetration levels, etc., very different as well. And of course, Abhiram making that point that yes, there is that disruption from EVs as well. Abhiram, so let's just talk about banks for a quick bit. I think like the third quarter, banks is where most of the earnings upgrades are coming from, financials broadly. So that continues, even though there is one or two disappointments as well. A few PSU banks have disappointed. Federal Bank was not all that what market hoped for. Your thoughts? in terms of what's buyable there and what you like, basically?
Okay. First, let's kind of take a look at the big picture situation, which is the credit growth number still seems to be very decent, upwards of 15%, which means that there is solid demand in the market still. The other thing is that there's a good chance that central banks around the world have paused, including the RBI. So I think the overall picture for banks is still quite healthy. Bear in mind also that corporate balance sheets in India have not been as healthy in a long time, maybe as much as a decade. So overall, the picture on banks is still good. What may happen going forward is that NIMs may have peaked. That said, there's growth, and the growth should, as you keep rolling over growth, I think you still find value in stocks. So we still like the large private sector banks, but we've also kind of diversified a little bit more to look at the smaller companies, certainly those in the NBFC side as well. I think that the sector as a whole is quite healthy. We are quite overweight on that space. And like I usually do, I also mention insurance companies as well. And I think those stocks have actually taken quite a bit of a hit. In the last month or so, they've started to recover. I think the story there from a long-term perspective is still very interesting, still in an under-penetrated space, et cetera, et cetera. So financials is probably our most overweight sector today.
Abhiram, short conversation, but we've got a management waiting by to chat with us on the show. Thank you very much for joining in. Before we get chatting with the management of UPL, let's